Hi guys, my name is Susie and I'm the Ancient History lecturer for ATAR Notes. I'm sure you're all busting with as much energy as Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD for all of your exams to be over and done with. But as much as they are fast approaching, we have a little bit of a way to go. Some of you may be wondering how you should approach studying for the coming HSC, or even how to literally approach the exam in general. So I've created a few short videos going through all of my tips and tricks for smashing each section of the Ancient History exam. I graduated last year in 2016 with a Band 6 in Ancient History. Within each video, I will outline how I tackled each section of the exam, how I responded to different question types, and how I studied prior to the HSC. I really do hope you find them useful, and let's go! So first off, Section 1, Cities of Vesuvius, Pompeii, and Herculaneum. Typically considered the easy section, but is that really true? Yes, Section 1 includes multiple choice and short answer questions, and you are given sources to bounce your responses from. However, the suggestion that Section 1 is easy marks just isn't accurate. In 2016, almost 10,000 students studied ancient history, and the same can be said for this year. Section 1 is the only section that doesn't have options, meaning that your responses need to stand out against 10,000 students if you want to do well. Along with this, so the questions may be easier, there are more of them, meaning that there's more opportunity to lose marks than in a one-question 25-mark essay. If you wrote a good essay for Section 4, you may have only lost 4 marks in total. However, if you had a good attempt at all of the questions in Section 1, maybe you only lost 2 marks in multiple choice, 2 marks in the short answers, and 7 out of 10 for the extended response. You've lost 7 marks in total. I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you this so you can prepare properly. Though it is not an easy section, there are things you can do to make things easier. Number 1, study the syllabus thoroughly. This may seem like obvious advice, but they can ask you literally anything from the syllabus. But that's the important thing. From the syllabus. NISA is lazy and questions for Section 1 are often just dot points with a question mark at the end. That means if you have at the very least an understanding of what features under each dot point, you'll be able to construct a response. For example, can you identify which events and issues are features of which dot point? Pause the video and have a go. And here are the answers. Got them wrong? Then you might want to spend a little bit more time revising over the content of the syllabus. Got them right? Great! Then let's move on to the next step. As you may have noticed, Section 1 of the Ancient History paper is split up into 3 sections: the multiple choice and short answers, the medium response, and the 10-mark extended response. The multiple choice and short answer sections may seem easy, however, don't get complacent. Read the questions carefully, as there will always be at least one question designed to trick those who aren't careful. Make sure to read all the options as well, even if you're pretty sure that the first one is correct. The first one may well be correct, but it might not be the most correct one, particularly in regards to the source. Remember that Section 1 is a source-based study, meaning that even if an answer may appear to be correct based upon your knowledge of the course, it may not be the most correct answer. There will often be 2 correct options. However, only one will be validated by the source. Along with this, it is really important that you have a wide knowledge of sources going into the exam. It is not uncommon to be given a photograph of a source with no contextual information that you have to know and identify in order to answer the question. For example, if you didn't know that source D was the Dionysiac frieze in 2016, then you were going to have a bad time with this question. So, short answer questions are interesting because they're not only a feature in Section 1, but also in Section 2. Therefore, it's really important that your short answer skills are just as tight as your essay writing. The way that you respond to a short answer question is going to be dependent on how many marks the question is allocated. For a 1 to 2 marker, typically an identify or briefly explain question, you need to keep your answer simple and to the point. Don't spend too long on these questions because the detail is just not required. Here are 2 examples of a 1 to 2 mark short answer response from the Sparta case study for Section 2. Notice that even though example 1 is worth 1 mark, it is slightly longer than example 2, worth 2 marks. That is because the verb at the beginning is different and requires a different type and length of response. If it asks you to name or identify something, then you can get full marks just by doing that. Whereas with a what it was question or an explain, you'll need to go into a little bit more detail. The way that you approach a 3 to 6 marker depends on which section of the exam you are completing. For Section 1, questions are almost always derived from Part 3 of the syllabus, the evidence provided by the sources from Pompeii and Herculaneum for ... This means that as long as you have memorized at the very least a few bits of key detail for each, then you should be sweet. You will also be given a source or two, which you need to continually reference throughout your response. To effectively do this, you need to make sure that you're not just describing what the source looks like, but focusing on what the source reveals about the past. As this is an evidence question, it is also super important that you are integrating other sources from both Pompeii and Herculaneum. Emphasis on the both, because poor little Herculaneum often gets left out. A lot of students find it difficult to balance their responses. How much of my own knowledge should I be including versus the source? Rather than giving you a percentage or a ratio, I'll be damned if I allow any form of maths to contaminate such a pure and innocent subject such as ancient history. Instead, I'll explain it like this. For the medium response, you use the prescribed source as springboards. Though of course, as part of the question, they do need to make a clear appearance. Don't think you can just get away with alluding to the source, you do need to be direct. They do not need to make up the entire response. Remember, this question is not a source analysis. You don't need to justify the importance of the source with this type of question or break down the textual construction. What you need to do is look at the source and make an assessment as to what aspect of the syllabus it is referring to. Then use the source to shape your argument. For example, if your question asks you to look at the economy and your source is a mosaic from Pompeii featuring marine and aquatic imagery, make sure to include some detail about how, due to their coastal location, the fishing industry was particularly prominent in both towns. For a Section 2 response, balance is key. This is because you will not be given a prescribed source to integrate. Your response will be purely based on your own knowledge. This means that it is very easy to go off on a tangent. In terms of structure, there is no need for an intro or conclusion. Just get straight to the point. Make sure that you are also backing up all of your points with evidence and relevant historical detail. Here is another Sparta response that I wrote last year which received full marks. Now let's have a look at the final section of Section 1, the extended response. Like with the medium length response, the extended response is always derived from the same section of the syllabus, investigating, reconstructing, and preserving the past. And you will be given two sources that must be incorporated throughout your response. As it is an extended response as opposed to a short answer, structure is really important for this question. You need to make sure that you have a short introduction and at the very least a one-sentence conclusion to sum up your argument. Like within pretty much every response we will write for ancient history, bar maybe a couple of short answer exceptions, you should start off with a judgment upon the question. This judgment doesn't have to be fancy. It just needs to let the marker know that based upon the evidence that you have been presented, you have formed an opinion. For example, let's say that the question was, how has the understanding of ethical issues related to the study and display of human remains in Pompeii and Herculaneum changed over time? My judgment could be, the understanding of the ethical issues related to the study and display of human remains in Pompeii and Herculaneum has changed greatly over time, as prompted by the introduction of new technology, research, and morality codes within the archaeological process. Notice that I use the key terms from the question. Though in subjects like English this may be frowned upon, as they are also marking you on your expression and grasp of language, in ancient and modern history, restating the question is actually beneficial. It reminds the marker that you are continually answering the question, something that unfortunately still many HSC history students forget is actually important. Within your brief introduction, you also want to mention both of the sources, and briefly, in one sentence, outline their context, the who, what, when, and where. In terms of paragraphs, I usually stuck with 2 main points, as I found that if I included any more than that, I would risk going over time. However, the amount of paragraphs and points that you make within this section, granted you can write it all within the allotted time frame and have sufficient detail, is in the end up to you. In terms of coming up with points, I'd be very much inclined to structure my argument around the arguments or information presented within the sources. That way you are killing 2 birds with 1 stone. You are integrating the sources in a more sophisticated way, as opposed to just dropping a few semi-relevant quotes here and there, and you hardly need to think about what topics you are going to address. Win-win. Something else that is really important within this section is detail. You want to have a lot of specific, non-source related information, such as your own literary and archaeological sources, knowledge upon the various key archaeologists, scientists, and researchers such as Fiorelli, Mao, Estelle Lazarum, and Sarah Beisel, and knowledge upon the different influential groups such as the Italian government and the Anglo-American project. And there we have it! All you need to know to smash Section 1 coming October 24th. I hope you found this useful and stick around for the other videos, the next of which will be dealing with essay writing and extended responses, something that literally relates to every section of the exam. If you want more help with ancient history or any other subject, there are a heap of resources available on atarnotes.com. For example, if you feel like you're struggling with the content of Pompeii and Herculaneum, might I recommend picking up a copy of the Ancient History Course Notes, written by yours truly, which goes through all the content, syllabus point by syllabus point, along with a lot of other goodies such as how to adapt to any source type, exemplar essays and other responses, and all the detail and historiography you'll ever need. If you'd like to pick up a copy, just head over to the shop section and check it out.